I'm Nel Koszela, reporting from Brussels. And in this part of our series, we'll dive into what's been happening EU-wide on digital rights and how the EU is reforming its own rules. Let's get started. The past 6 months have been crucial for digital rights in Europe. One of the most heated debates has been over how to fight child sexual abuse online without opening the door to mass surveillance of private messages. After years of deadlock, EU countries finally found a compromise on November 26, 2025. Under the Council's position, tech companies will face strong duties to remove and block child abuse material and grooming attempts. Another important step for data is the European Health Data Space. This law was adopted in early 2025 and countries are now preparing to implement it. In practical terms, this should gradually make cross-border healthcare easier. For example, allowing doctors abroad to access your health records securely if you need treatment while traveling, with strong safeguards for privacy. Meanwhile, the EU's big platform rules, the Digital Services Act and the Digital Markets Act, are now fully enforced and slowly reshaping the online environment. Large platforms must remove illegal contacts more quickly and explain how their algorithm works and give users more control and transparency. Moreover, on July 17, 2025, the European Commission opened a public consultation on proposed Digital Fairness Act. Its aim is to ban dark patterns, those tricks that nudge you into subscriptions and hide your cancel button or confuse you into sharing more data than you intended. If adopted, it would strengthen consumer rights and make online interfaces across Europe more honest and user-friendly. AI has also been high on the agenda. The landmark AI Act is already agreed and will start to bite from 2026, especially for high-risk AI used in areas like healthcare, recruitment, or critical infrastructure. But regulations realized that industry and governments were struggling to be ready in time. So on November 19, 2025, as part of the Digital Omnibus, the Commission proposed to slightly postpone some of the strict deadlines for high-risk AI recruitments to match the pace of developing technical standards and enforcement capacity. The idea is not to weaken safeguards but to make sure that they can actually be applied in practice. While waiting for AI Act to fully apply, the EU finalized a voluntary code of practice for generative AI on July 10, 2025, with major developments signing up to commitments on transparency, copyright, and safety for advanced models. In late September, the Commission also issued draft guidelines on AI incident reporting, so companies know how to notify authorities if their AI system causes serious problems. Taken together, these steps show Europe trying to encourage innovation while still putting some boundaries around AI's risk. In short, this period has seen a flurry of activity on digital rights. Your personal data should become easier to control, and your online environment should gradually become safer and fairer. And even as AI advances, the EU is trying to set clear guardrails that respect your fundamental rights. Thank you for listening to this part.
Hello, everyone. We are back to segment 3, as you got used from the other episodes. I have today here with me Niels Martin Sunesen. He comes from political world. We have Agnes, who comes from the tax world. We have Ahmed, which is a journalist for Last Week in Denmark, and we have Diane, who has a lot of opinions on this topic. Today we're gonna be talking about digital rights, or as you know it, chat control, right? Two words that really like triggered a lot of people in the last couple of months and made people either happy or angry. And I'm curious, what about you guys? Did it make you happy or angry hearing chat control, hearing the state wanting to read your messages? Niels, what do you think?
It's a bit of a mixed bag from my side of things. On one hand, you can of course understand the arguments for like being able to better keep track of criminals and stopping like child abuse. On the other hand, I don't in any way like people interfering with what I do online and hate it if it's targeted me. So yeah, bit of a mixed bag.
Agnes, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a tricky one because while the intentions behind it are good, I think it's definitely challenging from data privacy perspective. So it's a bit concerning.
Okay. Ahmed?
I feel it's very unrealistic given how we talk a lot about digital sovereignty in Europe, but a lot of these platforms are based in the US. Can the EU even make systems at that level?
Ooh, that's an interesting perspective. Diane?
Well, on the citizen perspective, of course, it depends upon how they handle privacy. Because one thing is, for example, privacy in corporations. Another thing is privacy on different household. Like for me, if I want it to be private, why would I put it online? So there has to be a balance on things, in my view.
Okay. So far what I hear is that there are, let's just say, benefits to the idea of scanning like messages, but at the same time it goes too far, or at least to different degrees between the four of you. So I'm just wondering, is any of you who really has a strong opinion about this chat control and feels like wants to be heard about it? Like when you heard the initiative first, when it was presented, did it speak to you? Was there anything there that made you either happy or angry?
I think it's a bit, if people still remember like the Pegasus accident from Greece, where
Okay.
they used something like this to spy on politicians internally, and I think that it's still flew too close to that whole agenda. To be honest, talking about, yeah, it might be to go against criminal activities, but for a lot of people, this will still feel like it's their privacy that's being sacrificed to offer up some more general security in society, which I think is the main issue here, because again, then you have to actually determine if it's worth it. Is your privacy worth more than your idea of safety?
But what if technology evolves and there's no human ever reading those messages? It's just an AI who just simply goes through mountains of data in looking for certain keywords. Will you be fine then?
Keywords can change.
Fair. so, so I guess revolution and organization of power and socialism and all of those keywords, right, that can trigger certain people in power today.
I think there has to be a balance between knowing what is your right and knowing what is your privilege.
Okay.
Of course, privacy is could be a right, but it has to be a privilege that somebody needs to be accountable and responsible, and be aware about what is the ups and downs. Otherwise, everybody would say, "Oh, this is my right and this is my right." Then it will be chaotic, right? So there has to be some certain rules where we find a balance between what is a right and what is a privilege. Otherwise, nobody's gonna be taking responsibility if everything goes left-handed, so
Okay.
to speak.
Let me understand this right. So you believe that privacy should be seen as a privilege, and that if necessary, it shouldn't be such a big deal that it's sacrificed. Correct?
If you're talking, as what Neil said, if you're talking about safety, what is your priority? What is more important to you? Safety or privacy?
Mm.
Because if you really want your information to be private, why put it on social media? I mean, otherwise you just keep it to yourself, right? So everything that you put on social media is, of course, your responsibility as a person because you know at some other point that it will um, you know, be seen by anybody. It's online.
Agnes, are you in team safety or team privacy?
I think it's a bit of a challenge because when it comes to social media, because when you talk about chat control, it's intended to be private, right? I think you're not intending it to put it out public. So from that perspective, I think we should have the human right to have privacy, right? So that's my point of view, and it doesn't mean that I there is that the whole idea of finding a way to eliminate this problem we have in the world, which is very sad. I don't necessarily think this is definitely going to stop it. Uh, but that's just my point of view. I think it's also if we have an AI program screening through these messages, yeah, like you will still need some process behind it, right? How do you going to process all this information, and how do you going to judge on, are you a bad person behind that conversation or a good person behind it? I think for me, in the practical point of view, it's a bit challenging to understand how they imagined that to work, and how to imagine to make it an efficient work. So you want some outcome out of, what is the purpose of it? Catch these criminals. So how do you get to that outcome just by screening through the chats? I don't necessarily see that as the best solution. But probably, I think those who are making these decisions, they may probably know more than we do about these criminal activities, right?
Well, one thing if you have a kid, because basically I go for safety. Like, for example, my daughter, she's a teenager.
Mm.
Of course, she's asking for privacy. But how far would I go for that? Because, for example, if she's still awake until 12 midnight and she has school the next day, should I not intervene and say, who are you talking to or what are you doing? I mean, it also takes responsibility and accountability and obligation that she knows she has school the next day. So, of course, for me, it's not a right that just because you want privacy doesn't mean that whatever you do is okay. There has to be some certain ground rules. And with my 9-year old, for example, he's on the iPad. Well, I don't want to intervene what he's watching, but of course, I need to go to this parental protection where he's only allowed to watch, kid show, not murder or not, something that's inappropriate on his age. So yeah, I mean, it's easy for us to say that we don't want to scan our message, but when our kids are involved and we are not, there to see what they're doing 24/7, then how do we actually protect them?
Ahmed, what about you? What do you think about the whole privacy versus security debate?
I think I agree a lot with Diane in the sense that safety and security is not something we should neglect. There are a lot of emergent threats to safety and security. I'm not sure if the chat control scheme is the perfect way to address those, but at least when I hear that there's a proposal to do such a thing, I think what is the underlying cause that has driven these policymakers and decision makers to try and build that system?
Niels, what do you think? Is it realistic to build such a system in first place? And why do you think the Germans were so against it that it was dropped in the end because of it?
Um, well, why the Germans were against it, that's, as far as I understand, basically like emotional scarring from the East Germany government from their time and their whole surveillance system, where people like heavily under the boot and can still remember what that felt like to have so many of your actions followed. I don't think it's an issue to actually build it. I think the issue is to make sure that you then continuously update it for all the new things that comes out.
Hmm.
Whenever do it, like there's a reason that Telegram and WhatsApp and those kind of things were created, and also a new one I can't remember. That's because you didn't trust Messenger or your general text messages. So whenever you put up a control, they'll just create something new. So you also have to be in front of this, and it's not going to be that difficult to get hold of these new ones. You just have to ask or know the right questions to ask to find them.
Well, that's true, right? When they banned TikTok for one night, Red Note became a thing, right? Nobody knew what the hell is Red Note until then, and then out of a sudden, Red Note became a competitor to TikTok for whatever reason, right? So people just moved to another one. So now they banned social media for young people in Australia, right? Anyone under 16 is banned from using social media. Now everyone is afraid. Okay, prohibition will just lead to side apps built by you know. Sketchy characters, let's just say. Honest, what do you think about
But
that?
it could
Yeah.
also, yeah, but sorry. Just going back to what you're saying, I have a strong feeling about, for example, the iPad.
Okay.
Because basically, I mean, as a mom, for example, I'm tired and I don't have a lot of energy after work to, talk to my son and then to my daughter and then cook at the same time. So, of course, the iPad is the easiest way. But the problem with that is then my kids, is dependent on technology. I mean, we are beside each other, but we're not actually talking because they're all busy, doing something or playing. So, again, there has to be a balance between what is technology being used of and how do people actually socialize. I mean, there's a lot of, how do you say, suicide at some other countries because, being bullied online, for example, or even pedophiles, that how do you control them? If, for example, you search on chat GPT will say, well, due to GDPR, then chat GPT cannot say anything, right? So again, what is the balance between privacy and safety?
Yeah, I think if I can add on this, like this new Australian law is because at the end of the day, what are we trying to achieve? We want to protect children, right? So is this what is the best way to do that? Is it that we completely screen through every single possible technology applications, or we may be trying to control the access of those to children? And probably I would say that's maybe a rather efficient way in my eyes to do that than just completely screening through every digital platform what we are using today.
Okay, so what you're saying is that maybe parents should take a bigger role here at preventing them on ever using the apps to begin with. So maybe banning phones in general for people under 18 or something like that. So use take away the tool, right? Because if they can just move from one app to another, then the only thing left to remove is the tool itself. What will they start building custom phones just to get on social media? Well, that will at least make them great in real sciences, right? If the
Yeah,
desire is so strong to get there that they will build their own custom phone that circumvents any sort of government
yeah,
ban. But also it's about how far can the government get involved, right? It's a tricky question because if you come from Eastern Europe, like me for example, we had the governments were not very, let's just say, slow on making sure that they have access to every tool possible to surveil the population, right? So for us, for Romanians, it's very any sort of proposal that goes too far, where the government goes too far in controlling you, is not perceived as a positive thing. And of course, Denmark didn't get to experience that. So for people in Denmark, it's a bit different perceived. But Niels, you grew up all your life here. What was people at home saying when you're around the kitchen table? What were your mom, dad saying about this?
About social media.
No, about the chat control idea. How did they feel about it?
Yeah, they are in the age bracket where that's not really relevant for them.
So they didn't even
Uh,
talk about it. They completely passed over the subject.
no, we have other things to talk about, like last municipality election. That's predominantly and Trump. I think that's the two main things they want to talk about at the dinner table.
Trump made it to
Um,
the dinner table. Fantastic. Cannot
but
imagine.
no, I mean, if with this whole thing, you can kind of like kind of what Diana's been talking about, kind of make sure that your kids are okay and stuff. That it's probably going to be like the new don't talk to strangers and don't go into the unmarked white van in front of your house or school kind of thing. That kind of discussions have probably been had with a lot of kids. I mean, that to develop their own understanding of social media, and that's why it's for a lot of people have been quite a rough experience because yeah, people aren't really that kind to each other online in a
Mhm.
lot of forms, unfortunately. So yeah, there's probably like how can you help parents like become more suitable to help their kids understand what they're getting into,
So,
that kind of stuff.
but here is the question of the government, right? Where is the line? Ahmed, you want to say something about it?
Sure, sure. Uh, I don't think it's just Romania. I mean, I think a lot of us can relate to only a few decades ago where it wasn't so safe to use analog technology like radios or telephone. People well, it was rather normalized that you could be wiretapped. Radio receivers could kind of intercept your calls. And maybe during the Cold War, where you had a lot of tension between countries in the world, a lot of turmoil, it would be very easy to say, okay, this does present some risk to me, but if it's catching threats and criminals and saving lives, then it's worth the risk. And I guess the response then was going away from technology, let's just leave all the radios and telecommunications at home. If I want to talk to someone in private, I'll write them a note on paper. But that has very much changed with the reality of today, where everything has become digital. So now we have computers, smartphones, and tablets, which brings its own problems. Uh, on the other hand, we don't have the same kind of ease of being able to surveil those digital systems. We have something called HTTPS. You might have heard of that before. So essentially, whenever I make a connection to send someone a message, it's possible for my internet provider to see which platform I'm using and who I'm trying to contact, but they can't read the message on their own. And so when we talk about chat control, it kind of means redefining how the internet is built in a lot of ways. And that's why I said it was unrealistic earlier. And so the idea that governments should be able to look into private messages, I see it as a sort of backsliding, sort of a regression to the previous status quo. But again, how realistic is it for them to be able to achieve that?
So you don't actually think that the technology is there even. So even if they wish to do it, it's just not really possible. I mean, think about it. How hard was it for them to build the technology that should be evaluating the value of our houses, right? And how much they failed in that process. So imagine building. I'm just imagine the magnitude of building something like that. It must be massive, right? The computing power to handle this massive amounts of data. Is that
Do you have any idea how many videos are uploaded to YouTube every second? I think it's something like only 5 years ago it was 1 million hours of footage per hour alone, and yeah, what is this level? If it's just text messages, that's okay, but people send each other photos, they send each other videos.
Hmm.
At some point, it is like horridly expensive to be able to listen to everything.
I'm starting to think that the Germans just stopped it because of that mainly. When they saw the price tag next to it, it's like, nope, that's not realistic. We'll build a three autobahn with this money, you know.
And you know how project works work normally, like the budget they are calculating what it would cost is always underestimated. So I can imagine they didn't even calculate with the realistic price there.
Imagine looking at our super Suehus, the super hospitals they built. They
Yeah.
all overpriced. I swear to God, like many times over. Even like UNICEF built recently, like this a hall to store stuff, and it ended up being, I think, 15 times more expensive than originally planned, just to build them hall for storage.
That was because of a change in the plans. It had to be reconfigured to be able to store medicine.
And that made it 15 times more expensive. That's just incredible.
Yeah, because of a cooling system.
Wow. Okay.
So
Everything is pricey in Denmark.
Yeah, exactly.
To be honest, if you talk to Eastern Europeans who still go home today, like to visit at least, and they compare prices, you'll notice that actually the price difference between Denmark and Bulgaria, Romania, I'm not sure about Hungary, uh, it's not that big actually. It's not
Yeah,
worth it to
I
buy.
agree.
Yeah, there you
But
go.
they have to stop converting because the moment they convert, how much is it in Denmark and how much is it in your home country? Then you will end up thinking, oh, it's expensive here. But hey, look at it this way. For example, our salary
Okay, if you put it
is,
that way, it's even
the
worse.
tax. Yeah, we pay high tax, but we also have a quality of life in Denmark. So what is more important to you, right? A low paying, low bills, but then you also have low salary? Or would you like to have a high salary? You could pay your tax and you could also travel because you have some savings. So, no, I cannot complain. In my country, yeah, your salary, when you touch it, I'm from the Philippines. So, when you touch your salary, I think it will only take 2 days and then it's gone. You cannot
Magic
even have your
salary.
own home. You have to live in your parents' no, I think Denmark has a, how do you say, a good system when it comes to, yeah, social security,
But talking actually about,
healthcare. Yeah.
sorry, Diane, talking about taxes, actually you brought here an important topic also that at least Denmark presidency wanted to look more at. They want to crack down on tax evasion, right, and digitalize the possibility to actually look at how people, spend their money and how people, earn their money. So, Agnes, you probably know the most about this topic. What do you think? How can we do something about this tax evasion that multinationals are doing in Europe?
I
Yeah.
don't think. Yeah.
I
Sorry.
said
Yeah.
sorry. I said awareness, and then Diana can continue.
Yes. I think. Well, first of all, I think. I think when these tax laws were designed, it was not designed for global economics. It was designed for local economics. So the world changed so much, and we have really outdated rules. So of course, I think today it's not really working very well, and it can seem unfair towards especially the local businesses. So I think the fact that they are reviewing this and they're trying to narrow this gap in between the local businesses and the multinationals is definitely gonna, help a bit from the perspective of the people. I think people want the tax system to treat everyone equally, um, and when we look at the multinationals and the local businesses, it's not really the case today. So it's definitely, I think, a right step what they're trying to do here.
But what are we trying to do there? What can we do?
So they would like to bring a flat minimum tax rate for the multinationals, 15% across Europe. And then if you think about the different countries in Europe, you have those countries which have a stable industry and economics. It's Ireland, for example, it's 12.5%. But also, if I think about Bulgaria and Hungary, they have 9%
Or
of the
Malta,
multi.
5%, right? Why do you think Wizard moved to Malta?
Um, but there are, of course, the multinationals already have lots of loopholes, right? So they can register the head office and um, intellectual property in other countries where the taxes are lower. So, of course, a local business can never compete with that. So, in terms of pricing, it's challenging to be a business person, I think. So it's definitely time for Europe to look at it in a way that we don't completely push them out of Europe, because of course the multinationals will still have opportunities outside of Europe to cut taxes. So I think this 15% is not that dramatic that they would leave Europe, but at least it would help to balance it a little bit. And of course, at the end of the day, it's income for the countries, right? So there will be more money for health system, schools, etc. So it's needed, very much needed. And this is one of the rules. But I think in the European Union and probably across the world, I think it's really really time for the governments to spend some time to look into these outdated rules. The world is improving and changing so much. Uh, it's just not the way to control it anymore.
So basically, one way would be to make some sort of a COP, like we do for fighting climate change, but to do it against tax
Yeah.
evasion, right? Call it Panama. Let's all meet in Cayman Islands to discuss tax evasion of the multinationals. By the way, Cayman Islands belongs to European Union, so you don't actually need a visa to go there.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a former colony, so it's still well, it still is a colony actually, in a way. But
That's a dependency, I think they're called. So, like with Greenland and Denmark, you can compare it.
let's call them former colonies then. 'Cause dependency. I love that the new political correct word.
That is the de facto word I think they have for them. So they're dependent on the UK government to help them, but they can do whatever they want.
Yeah, but they still have EU rights. That's why how EU has citizens all over Europe, all over the world, right? We have islands in the Indian Ocean. We have islands in the south of South America. We have the north in the Latin America, and on top of it, we have some Dutch
So
citizens,
that's
right?
just that's territories,
Yeah, but the
not
people living there
dependencies.
are citizens of Europe.
Yeah, but there's difference between dependency and territory.
Okay, so
So
you're saying
territories don't have any. They aren't like semi-independent. They're completely locked in.
so you're telling me that the people of Cayman Islands actually are not citizens of Europe.
Not sure.
Or at least if they were part of UK, they probably left as well.
Yeah, definitely not.
So
Then
it doesn't matter. It's outdated information already. 2020 has passed. It's 2025 already. 5 years later, UK has gone. We live in a new
UK check now.
reality in Europe.
Yeah.
Exactly. Niels, what do you think about what Denmark has done with when we had in the previous let's just say commission, right, European Commission, we had the competition portfolio, and we managed to do a lot of progress in this fight against multinationals doing tax evasion. Do you remember anything from then? What was so special that we were able, under which rules we were able to actually get them to pay so much money back?
Well, the main one was, of course, just to state it as being unfair state support that you gave to some companies, predominantly towards Ireland, that saying that their low tax rate was actually government support or government subsidies for the companies like Google and Apple, all the big American ones located over there, saying that it's unfair to the other companies. And then you had the whole Starbucks thing where they kind of shifted their income between the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg to make sure they didn't have to pay anything because the entire European, what's it called, yearly income was shown as being zero. And they didn't make any money in Europe apparently because they just kept switching it around, and they had like intellectual rights in one country that the other one had to pay for and stuff like that. Um, so that's why they had the whole discussion about that. Start up with a system where you have to pay taxes where you earn the money. You can't just move it around like that. That was the discussion that they tried to set up during the last period. And I know some of the members of the parliament are still fighting for that one quite heavily because that would be the most fair one. You pay the taxes where you earn the money.
Right now it's not the case. I thought that was the case already. I'm an entrepreneur. I thought that I'm already in that situation.
Yeah, but it's not like if you could set up an office in Sweden and then move all of your income from Denmark over to Sweden and then back again, even
I
though
can
you
do
are
that.
in Denmark.
Interesting. Give me
That's
more
what
ideas.
Starbucks did. They moved the money they made around to make sure that they could actually pay nothing because they could show that, well, we have no profits. They're all going to our branch in Luxembourg
It sounds like
because we have
like
to
a
pay them
scam.
for rights.
I
It
took,
is.
it sounds like a scam. I'm sorry, but it doesn't feel like it's legal.
But a lot of the corporations do this. Unfortunately, they it has this loophole to do that. Unfortunately,
But wow, so if you're a company who can afford to be in multiple countries, you just move money around and you're done. You literally don't pay anywhere.
I mean, that's why they're called gray areas because they aren't. It's really a definition. Are they actually legal or are they not? Because what you are doing is basically cheating in taxes one place, moving to another. But there aren't like hard defined rules saying that you can't do it. That's the main issue.
Okay.
yeah, exactly right. I think it's lacking the rule around these multinationals because the current law only covers like local, like national economics, not outside the border. So they need to sit down and think it over and bring a rule which would work. The challenge is now it's every single country is in this shoe, right? So they need to figure out a good solution for this. And it's always very hard to take back something which you already gave away. Yeah.
So
And also, of course, some countries have it as a business plan to entice companies to go there because the way that they set this up, saying you pay so little in taxes, so you set up here. So they, of course, don't want to change it. That's also why Ireland was so reluctant to actually enforce those fines that they gave to big companies because they don't want them to leave. They don't want them to say, okay, well, then we're going to move somewhere more fancy like Paris or, I don't know, Madrid because that's more sunny than Ireland, for example. It might be easier for them to maintain their workforce.
Niels, literally everywhere in Europe is nicer than in Dublin. You understand that, right?
Dublin can be quite nice. I mean, it
Once
is
you
coming from a Dane and my understanding of weather. Uh,
Well, climate change is helping us out. It's 10 degrees outside and it's December, for God's sake. We will end now the podcast with one last question to all of you. European Union has, at least under Danish, let's just say, leadership, European Union has made decent steps towards digitalization because we are living in one of the most digitalized states in Europe, and I guess Denmark tried to kind of give the same imprint to the rest of Europe. I'm still waiting as a Romanian citizen for all those systems to be digitalized in Romania as well. So, for example, if I want to change my name, I just go 3 clicks and it's done. I don't need to bother myself too much. I like that. I love the idea that in Denmark you just use one single document, and with that you just scan it everywhere. You don't need to complete all sort of bullshit applications and a ton of paperwork and all of that. So why can we have that on European level? Why can't we have this central system of digital IDs on a European level, right? So I was very happy to see the push down on European level. But what do you think? Do you feel like Europe itself could be more digitalized following the Danish model, or do you think that other countries are there that we can learn ourselves from in this direction? And any of you can take turns quickly.
I think I had something in mind.
Yeah.
Uh, if nothing else, I think it helps if we try to create initiatives for transparency and sort of getting citizens to engage instead of just kind of regulators, policymakers, and so on. To that regard, one very interesting thing is kind of open data. If you check the Statistics Denmark website, you can find a ton of information on kind of how is the educational situation in Denmark, how is the working situation in Denmark, and that doesn't just inform policymakers, but it also informs people if they decide to, for example, move to another city. This is information that you can use outside of the digital world, so to speak. In fact, there was an example, if I could just remember what it was called. I think it was take utilities, for example, right? We all pay some kind of electricity bill at the end of the month. A group of people from the Technical University of Denmark have developed this app called Min Strøm, meaning my power, that allows users to kind of compare the different electricity providers in Denmark. I'm not sure what circumstances led up to it, but at some point, I think they've also presented to the EU Commission as kind of a proof of concept of it would be nice if we could make things like this for common citizen needs. So, yeah, I think transparency and kind of getting people to engage goes a long way.
Super. Thank you. Whoever wants to continue next, just take the word. Yeah, Agnes, I feel like you're ready.
I think just very simply saying that I think everyone would definitely support the idea of digitalizing, saving time, saving energy. We just need some good security behind it. Um, but definitely we can improve. We can improve a bit, and I cannot call out which country is doing the best in Europe, but I think Denmark is already in a good place. Thinking about this myth, thinking about back my country, Hungary, everything you need to show up personally to sort out. So I think Denmark is not in a bad position, but definitely something they can focus on and use that technical knowledge. We have so much technical knowledge here, I think, in this country. So let's use that in a good way.
Thank you, Agnes. Niels?
But yeah, definitely. I mean, I think a lot of things are going to be able to like push digitalization in general all over Europe more forward. I think the whole focus on more open source tools is going to be a big part of it because it's going to be way cheaper for a lot of countries also to like gain some more of the steps that we have already in Denmark. And because we're in Denmark, also going to have to change our systems to actually be open source instead of like just being hooked up to Microsoft as we currently are. That's also going to mean that it's going to be more of a common project throughout Europe to actually make sure of this. And one of the funny places that is actually quite far along is like Germany, a place that's actually been notoriously bad at digitalization, horrible in every single way. Well, like in the North German Bundestate, they're actually already quite far ahead with the whole how to transfer over to open source applications instead. So definitely, I think that's going to be quite fun. And you also have to remember the whole twin transition, that the green transition in Europe is going to be going hand in hand with the digital transition. So it's also just in general something that everyone needs to be better to do. But yeah, some countries are a bit further behind, and it's going to be troublesome for them to catch up to the ones in the lead, and then the ones in the lead don't want to slow down for their sake.
Okay. So that will create some sort of divide. Thank you so much, Niels. Diane, your last remark?
Yeah, Well, for me, based on my experience in Denmark and comparing it to where I came from, I think it's a matter of trust. It works well in Denmark because, I mean, Danish people trust their government. So it has to be, it's like a pyramid. It has to come from the top. If you don't trust the top, then you cannot really trust anything that's going on or any change because why would you? I mean, if it doesn't suit you, then it doesn't suit to anyone. So I believe it's a matter of trust, one way or the other, in any type of country.
Okay.
That's all for me.
Thank you so much to everyone. Thank you for your heated debate sometimes in this conversation. I hope you have enjoyed. And yeah, we are moving on to the next segment. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. As you were used from the previous episodes, now we're going to use a couple of minutes to discuss what has happened during Denmark's presidency in the world of digital rights and administrative reform. So probably the most interesting thing that has happened, of course, has been the very, very dividing law, the chat control, right? It was about scanning private messages. And yes, you heard that right. Denmark has proposed to the EU to consider a law to detect and remove child sexual abuse material online, which could mean scanning even encrypted chats, something that privacy advocates were shuddering listening to that. So there was a huge debate on it, a lot of positions, but if we are to summarize it, we can say like this. The supporters of the law, they argue that tech companies must do more to find and stop child exploitation online, and they said that the new tools, like for example AI-based scanners, could save children by catching predators, even from the encrypted apps, like for example Telegram, right? While the opponents, they fear that this will be a mass privacy breach, essentially breaking secure encryption for everyone. The civil liberties groups warn that there is no such thing as a little backdoor. Once you allow authorities to scan messages, it will open the door to wider surveillance. So even the experts from the European Parliament, they pushed back too. They just rejected indiscriminate scanning and insist that detection should be targeted and with court oversight. So in the end, the chat control story, it died because the many countries were against it, so it remained just an idea and it has been shelved. But besides this headline-grabbing chat control story, the EU has been busy at enforcing and refining its broader digital regulation. For example, in August, the largest social media and online shopping platforms in Europe had to offer users more transparency and options. This is thanks to the Digital Services Act, which fully kicked in for very large online platforms. Practically speaking, we mean about Facebook, Instagram, Google, Amazon, and they had to explain how their algorithms recommend content and give people the ability to opt out of personalized feeds. There's also tougher action on illegal content. Platforms must remove things like hate speech, terrorist propaganda, or scams quickly, while still safeguarding free expression. Not an easy balance to have, right? The Danish presidency role here is mainly to ensure these new rules are have been implemented smoothly across all member states. So in short, the EU wants the digital realm to have the rule of law just like our offline world. Your rights should be respected online, and big tech companies must play by fair rules. And now let's talk about administrative reform. Here we're talking about the modernization and efficiency of EU itself, right? One angle is tax fairness in the digital era. Big multinational companies have historically used loopholes, big surprise there, right, to pay very little tax in Europe. The EU has been working hard to change that, and under Denmark's presidency, there has been a push to strengthen cooperation on taxes and fight evasion. In fact, Denmark listed countering tax avoidance as a top priority when it started its presidency. So, what does this mean in practice? Well, for one, EU countries are now implementing a 15% global minimum corporate tax, so that large corporations pay at least that rate wherever they operate. The idea is to stop a race to the bottom where countries felt pressure to offer ultra-low tax rates to attract business. You probably have seen the recent spat with X, right, where they got this big bill that made Elon Musk to hate Europe and plan for its demise. Another big driver about administration has been, of course, the EU enlargement, adding new member countries in the coming years, right? Denmark's presidency has raised the point that EU's decision-making might need updating as the union grows. We get more players, more countries, right? This could mean reforming voting rules to avoid paralysis when 30 plus member states are at the table to ensure that EU institutions, remain efficient. So you have to make some sort of a majority vote rule, right? No more vetoes. Also, the ministers in the Council, General Affairs, they talked about how to make the Council work better. So ideas included more self-restraint on creating new regulation to avoid, obviously, regulatory overload, as you heard in the previous episode, and to do better impact assessments for new laws. Denmark has a reputation for pragmatism, right? And true to form, they push for a practical, citizen-focused EU. That included things like improving digital public services and government transparency. So, to wrap up this segment, EU has been actively defending digital rights and have looked into how to make, let's just say, administration modernize and be up to the new era or the new AI era. Thank you for listening and see you in the next episode.